Coming up on Network Africa. Zambia's Electoral Commission suspends counting of votes from Thursday's general election due to alleged attacks on electoral officials. A legal twist delays the trial over the 1998 murder of prominent Burkina Faso journalist Norbert Zongo and his companions. Over 5,000 nurses take to the streets of Nairobi demanding the fulfillment of labor deals and career reforms. Welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Zambia's Electoral Commission has suspended the counting of votes from Thursday's general election, citing alleged attacks on election officials and the reported theft of marked ballot papers. The Commission ordered the count to stop nationwide, saying violence has been reported at some locations and warning of concerns over the security of ballot materials. The Commission says it will review the decision within 24 hours. The development has already triggered political concern, with opposition leader Brian Mundubile warning the delays could create opportunities for interference or manipulation. President Hichilema urges Zambians to remain calm, patient and peaceful as the country awaits the official outcome. Speaking of which, the president was seen at his polling unit casting his ballot in Lusaka as millions of Zambians voted on Thursday in an election that could give him a second five-year term. Hichilema came into power in 2021. He's seeking to defend his economic record, pointing to Zambia's debt restructuring, rising investment and expansion of the country's copper industry. His ruling UPND party says higher copper production is boosting government revenue and creating more resources for education, healthcare and other public services. But the election is also being fought over the cost of living and jobs. Opposition parties arguing the economic improvements have yet to benefit many ordinary Zambians. Hichilema's main challenger, Brian Mundubile, released the opposition alliance, backed by supporters of former President Edgar Lungu. To win this election, one candidate needs to have more than 50% of the vote. If no one reaches that threshold, the top two will face a runoff.
You need to understand that copper and many other mineral resources are basically traditional exports that constitute part of the biggest government revenue. The revenue we're collecting, because government now is a shareholder, who is SADC, is what is making the Zambia Revenue Authority hit the budget target, thereby giving government enough money to sustain free education, because it's not free because no one is paying. Government is paying to buy food for the pupils, to create more jobs, recruit health workers, so that government can have liquidity. So when we are increasing copper production, it means that the government is getting more money from the returns. And then I should also mention that we have also deliberately established a commission to regulate mining as well as mine sustainably in a more accountable manner. We have the Minerals Commission, I'm sure you've heard that, which was established as an act of parliament. We've also introduced what we are calling the local content. The local content is helping the local manufacturing companies, so that when the mine wants to buy a particular machinery, if it's produced in Zambia, they have to buy in Zambia and not from a foreign company. Under domestic loans and what government owes, we have paid over 75%, because our colleagues borrowed everywhere. As we are speaking, just last year alone, we had paid over 30 billion kwacha debt servicing. Now, cost of living. When the country has been destroyed for 10 years, it cannot take 5 years to resolve everything.
Burkina Faso, where a legal twist has delayed the trial of the 1998 murder of prominent Burkina Faso investigative journalist Norbert Zongo and 3 of his companions. Zongo, who published the independent newspaper, was investigating the suspicious death of a driver linked to the brother of then-President Blaise Compaoré when he was killed. Burkina Faso's Attorney General says 3 people, including François Compaoré, are set to stand trial on charges including murder, aggravated destruction of property, and complicity in murder. However, the start of the trial has now been postponed after a lawyer for one of the accused, Banagulo Yaro, appealed against a ruling by the investigating chamber. More than 5,000 nurses and midwives have taken to the streets of Nairobi demanding the implementation of a long-delayed collective bargaining agreement. Chanting and blowing vuvuzelas, the health workers marched through the capital carrying placards warning they will not back down until their demands are addressed. The protesters are calling for the immediate signing and implementation of the collective bargaining agreement, otherwise known as the CBA, as well as career progression guidelines for nurses who say they have remained in the same position for years. Protesters warn the dispute is already having serious consequences for patients. Some mothers reportedly giving birth at home, babies missing vaccinations, and surgeries being disrupted. Kenya's first collective bargaining agreement between the Health Ministry and the Nurses Union was signed in 2024, covering salaries, allowances, and job classifications and working conditions. The demonstrators have vowed to keep returning to the streets until their grievances are addressed.
We are therefore not asking what is not in the Constitution. It is our right to have a collective bargaining agreement. Yes. And we are saying we are not children of a lesser God. Yes. Enough is enough. The nurses of this country, we have resolved that our bare minimum is a signed and implemented collective bargaining agreement before we talk of any other thing.
The health of each Kenyan is important. The ripple effects of this strike are immediate and long term. Yes. Today, as we talk, mothers are laboring and going through their deliveries at home and at Nyamrerwas. Children or babies who are born are going without immunization. Yes. Patients who need special services are going without those services. Emergency operations and elective operations are not taking place. Kenyans are dying, and they are not dying because of the nurses. It is the patients who have made us to choose our profession. And without the patients and our community, our profession would not be there. So we chose a profession, and we were ready to serve, and we are ready even to serve right now. Yeah. If all our demands are respectfully given to us.
Turkey is urging Egypt to join a new defense agreement signed with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan as regional powers seek to strengthen security cooperation amid escalating Middle East tensions. The Mecca Joint Defense Agreement includes a key commitment that an attack on one of the three signatories would be treated as an attack on all. Turkish President Recep Erdogan says he hopes other countries will join the pact, which he describes as an effort to help stabilize a region ravaged by conflict. Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati says Cairo must first assess the agreement's legal and constitutional implications, particularly the obligations that would come with a mutual defense commitment. The pact comes as Middle East deals with the wider fallout from the 5-month U.S.-Iran war, which has disrupted shipping through the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea and shaken the region's security stability. The new agreement highlights closer ties between Turkey and Saudi Arabia as regional powers reassess their security partnerships. We're in South Africa. Concerned parents at Set Haller Primary School of Mpumalanga in South Africa say that their children are being forced to learn in buildings that are dilapidated, heavily cracked in, and, in their view, no longer safe or suitable for learning. Parents, say that they have raised concerns about the condition of the school, but progress on addressing the problems have been frustratingly slow. Our reporter Innocent Samosa visited the school, spoke to parents, the principal, and members of the community about the deteriorating conditions.
At Setlare Primary School, the biggest concern for parents is no longer simply the quality of education, but the condition of the classrooms where their children spend much of their day. They say parts of the school are badly dilapidated, with cracks visible across the buildings, raising serious concerns about the safety and stability of the facility. The school's principal acknowledges the concerns and say efforts have been made to engage the education department over the condition of the school.
In fact, they came a lot of times. In fact, they've got a history of what the school is all about. They barricaded some 5 classes and 3 classes so that we don't put children in there. So the learners are no longer there, but I'm applying time and again for the department to come and demolish the place because it's dangerous to the learners. Even if they are not inside the classes, when they are playing around the school, it might come and hurt them. So I'm just waiting for them because the Department of Education, the whole head office was here in 2022. They know the story. They really know what is the problem. They are the ones who told us to barricade the place.
But, she says, the slow pace of response has been frustrating, particularly as learners continue to attend classes in these same buildings.
They're taking time. I don't know. I think that SDB went there more than 5 times to the Department of Education.
For these parents, sending their children to school should come with the reassurance that they are learning in a safe environment, but they say the state of infrastructure has left them increasingly worried. There's also a personal connection of the school among some of the younger parents I spoke to. They themselves attended Maudule Primary School as children and have now returned as parents, sending their own children to the same institution. They say it is painful to see a school that formed part of their childhood now struggling with deteriorating infrastructure.
I'm very concerned. I started here while the structure of the school was like this, and even up to now it is still like this. And I'm a former chairperson of the SGB here at the school. We tried all means to go to different departments seeking for help and everything. We have done all our best to get the attention of the department. Up to now, there's nothing that is happening.
I'm very disappointed.
I am very disappointed. I'm also a former chairperson of the school governing body, and we have approached the provincial department several times seeking assistance. Instead of building a proper school, they provided us with mobile classrooms.
Well, I'm just the mouthpiece of this community. What they need is audience with the Department of Education in the country. Well, what they need right now is speed. They need urgency. They say that it cannot be that kids are studying in these kinds of conditions. From Mpumalanga in South Africa, Innocent Samos, Channels Television News.
Still in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa delivered the SADC public lecture at the University of KwaZulu-Natal this afternoon. The address comes as the country hosts the 46th SADC Summit in Durban, which began on Monday. During the lecture, the president spoke on pressing issues in the region and called on SADC member states to use their own resources rather than relying on other continents.
While we have made much progress, there is still much to be done. We are a population of 430 million people with a GDP of some $950 million, which is almost $1 trillion. It's a formidable resource for the people of our region. Trade amongst our SADC states stands at just under a quarter of our combined total trade. And yet together, we have the means to produce all the goods and the services that we need. And together as a community, we have all the energy sources that we need. We have the land and the means to produce all the food that we need. Together, we have the mineral resources we need. We have the technology and the know-how to turn these resources into manufactured goods that our people can use, but also goods that peoples in other parts of the world also can need. We have the financial institutions, the funding instruments and the markets to finance our industries and to build the infrastructure that we need. And yet, we look beyond our shores to supply our people. Our railways were built to run to the sea rather than to run to each other. They were designed to carry raw minerals to destinations that are far afield and to bring goods produced elsewhere in other parts of the world to our cities and to our towns. Now, this reliance on others rather than on each other is one of the most persistent constraints to the development of our region. And it is this reliance on others that must be brought to an end. And it must be brought to an end now rather than later.
South Africa President Cyril Ramaphosa. We're off on a short break now on Network Africa. Still ahead. The Central African Republic marks 66 years of independence with a major military parade at Camp Kasai in Ghana. Stay with us. Welcome back on our Africa Tech segment today. The latest State of Tech in Africa H1 2026 report highlights the rapid rise of clean tech investments across the continent, raising questions over whether record funding is translating into meaningful improvements in energy access and economic productivity. According to Tech Cabal Insights, clean tech attracted about $688 million in investments in the first half of 2026, making it one of Africa's fastest growing investment sectors, even as fintech funding declines by almost 24% year on year. The shift reflects growing investor interest in businesses focused on infrastructure, climate resilience, and fundamental development challenges. However, despite the surge in climate-focused investment, more than 600 million Africans still lack access to electricity, while millions of SMEs depend on generators and unreliable grids. The conversation, therefore, turns now to what must happen next to ensure climate capital moves beyond funding headlines and delivers affordable, reliable energy and tangible economic benefits for businesses and communities across Africa. Let's bring in our guest now, newsroom editor at Tech Cabal, Ganyu Oloruntade, joining us now on Network Africa. He'll help us understand this trajectory. Ganyu, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me, Amarachi.
Going through your latest reports, Tech in Africa showing energy and water startups attracted $228 million in H1 2026. What needs to happen to ensure this capital translates into real improvements in energy access, affordability, and reliability?
I think the most important signal here is that the investment itself is the beginning of the solution and not the solution itself. So what we've seen is that having this level of funding shows that investors themselves see real opportunities in solving some of those pressing infrastructural problems on the continent. But when you look at the scale of the problem in the real sense, you realize that it's really, really minute. And where the conversation really has to go is now, going from just funding the startups to how do we translate some of the interesting solutions that has come out of this continent, building them into scalable businesses that can, ultimately unlock economic growth, that can create jobs opportunity. So the conversation is not just about funding the startups. It is how do we translate the solutions into impact, and the impact will be how many people, how millions of people, businesses can, the solutions reach, and that's really where the conversation is.
Yeah, and maybe the next question will probably help you explain better, how this translates, because you also say that with more than 600 million Africans still lacking access to electricity, we can't even talk about Nigeria alone. Is the surge in clean tech investment translating into meaningful improvements on the ground?
The honest answer is yes, but of course not at the scale that the continent needs. Like I said, if you look at the size of the investment and you compare it to the problems that we actually have, what you realize is that it is small. you have potentially hundreds of millions of people who would have access to electricity. And the level of funding that has currently got into the startups is still very, very minute. So the conversation now goes from just really funding the startups to how do we start thinking of building ecosystems, which is where the broader conversations around regulation comes in, the conversation around how do we provide the enabling environment for those businesses to thrive, which is the long-term financing and the patient capital that these companies need to be able to build. All of the other critical stakeholders, convening them, letting them see where the real issue is, because impact is what matters. Startups can get funded, but if they cannot translate that funding and they are able to build scalable businesses that can solve problems, then we'll be missing the mark. So that's really, really where the conversation is: building systems around some of these solutions, building an ecosystem that is impact-led, building solutions that can solve problems that affect the everyday Africans. That's where the opportunity is.
And I suppose there is an event coming up, that might provide some solution to this. It's called Moonshot. Could you explain exactly how this would help make the connection between investors, founders, and policymakers?
I think about the thinking for us is that the most consequential conversations around the most pressing issues in the ecosystem has to happen in a room. And Moonshot gives us the opportunity to be able to bring the most critical stakeholders. So in the context of climate tech, a founder has a solution, but he needs capital to scale. The investors have the capital, but they also need the understanding of the regulatory environment. The regulator doesn't really understand what is happening here. And so what we want to do is to be able to bring everybody together in a room, and we're able to ask the most pressing questions, which is how do we translate these businesses into actual solutions? How are we able to impact millions of people? How are you able to translate these interesting ideas that people have, a lot of the startups have, that they're able to get funding? How are we able to turn them into impact? Which is, if a company is potentially reaching maybe 10,000 people today, how can that, translate to 10 million people in the long run? So the thinking is now convening everybody that is important within that conversation and giving them the opportunity to be able to share ideas and have long-term solutions to solve some of these problems.
Newsroom editor at Tech Cabal, Ganio Oloritade, thank you so much for speaking with us about this.
Thank you, I'm Raja.
Well, the Food and Agriculture Organization is calling for greater investment in artificial intelligence to help transform agriculture across Africa. FAO Deputy Regional Representative for Africa, Mes Malo, says AI is already helping farmers make better use of weather, climate and satellite data. Malo says the technology can also give farmers early information about market conditions, helping them decide when to sell, store or transport their crops. He also warns that AI cannot replace agricultural extension workers, saying human oversight and direct support to farmers remain essential.
For weather and climate services, we've seen a great leap, because in Africa, that ability to combine historical weather information, satellite and Earth observation data was not there. And that is now really being used. The AI is becoming such a powerful tool, but I have to say that it is not there to replace the extension workers, so that maybe governments or the private sector can pull out of extension work. They still remain important, and human oversight remains very essential. Less than 10% of farmers are benefiting from digital agriculture services in Africa. So the fact that this AI system exists does not mean that the small farmers and those in the rural areas you're mentioning benefit from it. So I have to say that many rural communities, just 1 out of 10,
Guys, congratulations are in order for the Central African Republic, marking 66 years of independence with a major military parade in the capital, Bangui. The ceremony at Camp Kasai featured cadets, infantry special forces, bomb disposal units, and female soldiers, followed by motorbikes, military trucks, and armored vehicles. The celebration comes months after President Todera was sworn in for a third term following a disputed election. The Constitutional Council declared him winner with 77.9% of vote. In his Independence Day address, he acknowledged the challenges ahead, saying the road to development remains long and calling on Central Africans to work together towards a more stable and prosperous country. This parade showcased efforts to strengthen the CAR's armed forces, including through training and foreign military partnerships. CAR gained independence from France August 13, 1960, after decades of French-controlled territory of Ubangi Shari. That's what it was known as before. Here's our final fun fact for the week. If you have been following us since Monday, did you know that Africans were among the earliest known miners in human history? At Ngwenya Mine in present-day Eswatini, archaeologists discovered evidence of mining activity dating back around 43,000 years. Thousands of stone tools and other artifacts were recovered from the site, showing that ancient communities were mining hematite, a material used to produce red pigment. And that means organized mineral extraction in Africa dates back tens of thousands of years, as long before modern mining technology even existed. That's Network Africa. Thanks for watching. I'm Rachi.